On today's show, in what felt like a playoff preview, the Rockets lost a heartbreaker to the Nuggets. Kevin Durant and Alperen Sengun struggling in this one, but yet another Reed Sheppard breakout game. We're going to break it all down for you right here at Locked On Rockets.
This is Mission Control, Houston.
Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
What is up, and welcome to another edition of Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast, home for everything Houston Rockets basketball, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, now the #1 podcast network in the world. As always, I'm your host, Jackson Gatlin, native Houstonian and credentialed media member. I'm also the host of Locked On NBA Fridays. Be sure to follow along wherever you listen to your podcasts or on YouTube. Just search Locked On Rockets, where the best way you can help us grow our show is to listen every single day on a podcast platform of your choosing, and then like, comment, subscribe on YouTube. On today's show, we're going to be talking about the Rockets' 112-109 loss to the Denver Nuggets in their third in-season tournament group play game, now falling to 1-2 in the tournament bracket. We'll break down the tournament standings a little bit later on in this episode. Going to get into the struggles from Kevin Durant and Alperen Sengun in this game. Just keeps having them. Another breakout performance from Reed Sheppard. 27 points, career high in this one. Single-handedly brought the Rockets back into this game, completely turning it on its head. We'll talk about the ridiculous close in this one, the almost comeback that fell just a little short in this game. A lot to get to from this one. First, I want to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use all across the app. Head to FanDuel.com to get started. And as always, thanks so much for making Locked On Rockets part of your day every single day, whether it's on your way to work, on your lunch break, in the gym. Thank you so much for being an everydayer. A couple shout outs to a couple different everydayers that I saw at the Nuggets game. Matt and Mike, I appreciate both of you guys for stopping me, saying what's up, talking a little Rockets. Sorry you guys didn't get to see a win on Friday. It was a tough game. It was a good game, but it was a tough game, man. This is one where you saw the experience kind of win out for the Nuggets at the end of the day. The Jokic-Murray tandem is just... Their two-man game is so good. When we were ranking the best duos in the NBA the other day, I got caught up in thinking like sheer talent of the duos, not focused on like the chemistry that they have. And I think it from that perspective, you got to go back and redo that list and put Jokic-Murray #1. Just watching the way that those two guys play off of each other in particular, even in a game where they lost Aaron Gordon 3 minutes into the game, Nuggets were able to come away with the win. And look, we're going to get into a few of the different areas from this game, some of the bigger takeaways. But the biggest takeaway from this game has to be Reed Sheppard. It has to be. This game would have been an ugly 25-point blowout without the contributions of Reed Sheppard in this one, in particular because of the struggles of Kevin Durant and Alperen Sengun. But Reed continues to just catch fire and to just make such an immense impact for this team. This game, the Rockets were dead in the water until Reed Sheppard absolutely took off in the second quarter, and they just caught fire offensively after the worst offensive quarter of the entire season, only putting up 12 points in the first frame, trailing 25-12 after one. That second quarter was like storybook, the way that Reed Sheppard popped off. Scored 18 points in the second quarter. He had 20 first half points. He had one bucket in the first quarter, but scored 18 of his 20 first half points in that second quarter on 7 of 10 shooting. He was 4 of 6 from downtown. And this was yet another one of these Reed Sheppard performances where when you see that he's got it, when he's got it, he's not afraid anymore. He's hunting his shot. He's looking for his offense. And the Rockets, to their credit, rode the hot hand in that second quarter. They leaned into Reed Sheppard. He got them going. He brought them back with his offensive punch, the spark off the bench, and they leaned into it for the rest of the quarter. And that's what got them all the way back into this game. and actually gave them a small lead at halftime, a 3-point lead at halftime, 49-46. And everything just feels like it clicks better with Reed Sheppard out there. There are still the defensive concerns on that side of the ball. Absolutely. You can't ignore that, and you can't pretend them like that they don't exist. Reed has he's gotten a lot better on the defensive side of the ball, and I'm going to give him a ton of credit for that, right? From kind of where he was like in the preseason and at the start of the season, and how much better he's gotten with each passing game, defensively recognizing where to be, how he can be effective, not getting bullied as frequently on certain matchups. That's a really encouraging sign. But at least on the offensive side of things, everything just falls into place when Reed Sheppard plays. Everybody looks like their roles are much clearer when he's out there, and he unlocks this Rockets offense. He does. They take off to another level when he's out there. Ime elected to start Steven Adams in this game to combat the size of the Nuggets, and to have a bit more size going up against Nikola Jokic. And we'll talk about this a little bit more when we get into the struggles for Kevin Durant and Alperen Sengun. But the spacing was just abysmal. The spacing was awful with Steven Adams and Amen Thompson out there at the same time. And the Nuggets took advantage of that. That's why the Rockets offense was so bad in the first quarter, because of the way that the Nuggets were defending things and loading up on Durant and Alpi. But when Reed Sheppard is out there, specifically when Reed is out there with the other four starters, everybody's roles just slide perfectly into place, right? You have your star players doing the heavy lifting with Durant and Alpi. You have Jabari able to space the floor on the wings. You have Reed Sheppard spacing the floor as well, or operating with the ball in his hands, which is, has been impressive as well. Some of the on-ball reps that Reed Sheppard is earning here over this most recent stretch. And then the biggest factor is, I think, you get to, like, Reed lets Amen be Amen again. Like the Amen Thompson that we saw last season that looked like he was ready to take an all-star level leap going into this year. Amen gets to go back to being a secondary ball handler. He gets to go back to playing off ball more, playing out of the dunker spot, playing out of the corners, rather than having to focus on walking the ball up, initiating offense, playing at the top of the key, playing above the break, where defenses are sagging off of him and daring him to shoot shots. And he's not in the same positions to be as successful as he was in the past. That's what it feels like so far, is when Reed is out there, everything else just clicks. The spacing is better for the stars. And at this point, it just feels like it's only a matter of time before he's permanently in the starting lineup. And I say permanently because we're going to have a second show out, probably a bit of a shorter show, reacting to the news that also came out this weekend that Kevin Durant would be missing the next two games for the Rockets against the Suns and against the Warriors on this little West Coast road trip. And that presents a perfect opportunity for Ime Udoka to insert Reed Sheppard into the Rockets starting lineup. And so we'll talk about that in a not quite back-to-back episode. We'll be on the lookout for our little extra bonus episode. But that's what this game felt like. And the Rockets don't win this game, or sorry, they're not even in this game without Reed Sheppard's contributions. But here's the downside, is they froze out Reed Sheppard in the second half. That's the reality of it, is the guy that almost single-handedly got you back into this game in the first half. He got the start in the second half over Steven Adams. Ime Udoka went with the adjustment at halftime, in part because Aaron Gordon left the game early. But only 2 shot attempts for Reed Sheppard in the entire second half of this game after his almost flawless offensive performance in the first half. And that's just unacceptable. Like, that can't happen, right? There's an understanding of, you want to try and get to your stars and try and get, Alpi and KD to, shake off the rust and break out of their bad games and get them going in order to be able to, be in position to win the game. Yes. But you also have to ride the hot hand. And at no point did the Rocket, and there were multiple opportunities that Reed had in the second half, wide open opportunities where Rockets just failed to recognize that he was free, whether it was Kevin Durant or Sengun or whoever, failing to recognize that Reed Sheppard was open and available to, for a kick out or for, a shot opportunity, what have you, or even just running some sets specifically for Reed Sheppard. And that was one of the things where he looked a lot more comfortable out there with the second unit guys, right? Hunting his offense, looking for his shot. Whereas once the first unit was back out there, not to say he went back to being passive, but just, the first unit guys were trying to get themselves going rather than looking for the hot hand and rolling with the guy that got them back in the game in the first place. So that was a bit disappointing to see, but overall a really encouraging performance and a lot to like out of this game, despite the loss. And, I'm not going to crazy overreact to this one, in part because I think that this is a winnable matchup for the Rockets. And we'll talk more about that here in just a moment. We'll talk about the Kevin Durant and Alperen Sengun struggles from this game, as well as the crazy finish to this one. Going to get to all of that here in just one moment. First, today's episode was brought to you by Gusto. Let's be real. No one starts a business for the joy of calculating tax withholdings or managing payroll spreadsheets. That's where Gusto comes in, to take the stress out of payroll, benefits, and HR so you can focus on running your business and supporting your team. Gusto is the all-in-one remote-friendly payroll and HR platform that makes managing your team simple, transparent, and fast. Whether you're hiring, onboarding, or paying employees, Gusto helps you do it all from one place without the hassle or hidden fees. Unlimited payroll runs for one monthly price, which means no surprise charges at the end of the month. Gusto's automated tools like offer letters, onboarding materials, and direct deposits save hours every single week. So try Gusto today at gusto.com/lockedonnba and get 3 months for free when you run your first payroll. That's right, 3 months of free payroll at gusto.com/lockedonnba. One more time, that's gusto.com/lockedonnba. Today's episode is also brought to you by Wayfair. The holiday season is right around the corner, and that means it's time to get your home ready. Whether you need more seating for guests, cozy new linens, or fun serveware for holiday hosting, Wayfair's Black Friday sale is here to help you make your space shine. And the best part, you don't have to wait. Wayfair's Black Friday deals are happening all month long with up to 70% off everything from sofas to spatulas. I just bought myself a brand new entertainment console for my living room. I had like a little 3-piece set that was bulky and I didn't really like the look of it in my new place. And so I bought a new one. And honestly, my favorite part of it was the hassle-free shipping directly to my doorstep. It was fantastic. Wayfair made the whole process so simple, so easy. That's the number one furniture site that you want to be using right now. So don't miss out on these Black Friday deals. Head to wayfair.com now to shop Wayfair's Black Friday sale for up to 70% off. A lot of their inventory is being marked down right now. It's awesome. Head to wayfair.com. That's wayfair.com. Sale ends December 7th. And continuing on here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. All right. This was, look, maybe it's because I've had a little bit to ruminate on this game, but this shouldn't be a crazy overreaction loss. This wasn't like a BTA performance by the Nuggets where you're like, oh yeah, the Nuggets are definitely in a whole different stratosphere as the Rockets, and the Rockets are nowhere near as good. There were certain things in this game. Talked a little bit about the spacing issues, there in segment one, but it really did feel like, the Rockets got off to such a poor start in this game, and in part because the Nuggets were able to scheme completely against whatever the Rockets wanted to do because they had two bigs out there, two non-shooters out there in Steven Adams and Amen Thompson. And the Nuggets were just flat out disrespecting these guys, completely. They were ignoring Amen Thompson off ball in this game. And they were able to load up so heavily on the drives and the offensive opportunities from Alperen Sengun and Kevin Durant early in this game. And that also doesn't even include the fact that even though they were loading up on these guys so heavily, there were a number of shot attempts there, especially in the first quarter, that just Rockets had a lot of halfway in and out shots, just shots that were frustrating misses that probably would have gone down otherwise, because of how effective this team has been offensively, how good of a shooting team this team has been this season. This was easily their worst offensive performance of what felt like the entire season. And some of that was the Nuggets defense and scheming against how the Rockets were playing in this game, really, again, taking advantage of those moments where the two non-shooters were out there and the Rockets were kind of struggling in some of those lineups. But outside of that, it was also just the Rockets just had a really bad shooting game. They only shot 44% from the floor. They were 39% from downtown, 14 of 36 overall. Shout out to Reed Sheppard, obviously had his big game, 5 of 8 from downtown. And then Jabari Smith Jr., who got hot late in this one, hit 3 triples in the fourth quarter and, had that insane corner 3 to, bring him within 1 possession at the very, very end of regulation. Almost forcing an overtime period there with the little surge at the very, very end. But he was 5-11 from downtown as well. This was a game where they didn't take advantage of so many different opportunities. And even at the free throw line, right? This has been a good free throw shooting team. They've gotten to the line a ton this season, only 13 of 20 at the charity stripe. Just kind of what felt like at times a lack of focus in this game for the Rockets. And credit to the Nuggets, who played incredibly well despite losing, who has arguably been their second most impactful player this season after Nikola Jokic in Aaron Gordon. His role is so important for this Nuggets team, and they didn't miss a beat. They just kept chugging along, and the 2-man game between Jokic and Murray that the Rockets had really no answer for defensively. There were some brief individual moments of Amen Thompson guarding Jamal Murray that were impressive, but especially in the moments where the Rockets went to zone coverage, I mean, the 2-man game between Jokic and Murray just carved up the Rockets defense. And that's what they do. That's why they're one of, if not the most dynamic duo in the NBA. I should have put some more respect on their name the other day. But for Kevin Durant and Alperen Sengun in this game, they just couldn't ever catch a rhythm. And, you have to imagine a little bit, with Jokic, even though he'd never probably admit it publicly, right? He probably gets up for these matchups against baby Jokic and Alperen Sengun. And there's been a lot of talk of Sengun's play this season. And unfortunately, right, in this game, Jokic just big dogged Alpi. There's a reason Jokic is Jokic, and there's a reason Alpi is Alpi at this point, or baby Jokic. Jokic was a monster in this game. He's a monster every game, but it was a masterclass from Jokic, right? 34 points, 10 boards, 9 assists, 11 of 20 shooting, had 4 stocks, just did everything in this game for the Nuggets. And on the Rockets side of things, Alpi, unfortunately, 14 points, 5 rebounds, 6 assists, had a steal, 4 turnovers, just 6 of 14 shooting. Struggled to find a rhythm offensively, started to maybe find a little bit of a rhythm late in this game where he hit 3 of his shots in the fourth quarter. But, by then it was not quite a little, too little, too late. But the bigger issue in this game was the Rockets defense on Jokic, and in particular, Sengun's defense on Jokic, because we've seen Sengun guard Jokic a hell of a lot better than he did in this game in the past. There have been some really impressive performances between Alpi and Jokic over the years, and Alpi has done about as good a job in one-on-one man-to-man coverage against Jokic as any true one individual defender can do. And this game was not that example, unfortunately. This was a game where it felt like at various points, Alpi was either too late on a closeout, gave Jokic too much room for an open 3-pointer, or, failed to tag back to the roll man in time, wasn't bodying up to him the way that he needed to on box outs, on second chance opportunities in particular. Jokic had 4 offensive rebounds in this game. At one point, the Nuggets were kind of punking the Rockets on the rebounding in the first half of this game, where they doubled up the Rockets on the glass, which doesn't happen ever. The Rockets only lost the rebounding battle 1 time this season to the Pistons. And so it was frustrating in that regard, because not only was Alpi struggling to get going offensively, but he also left a lot to be desired defensively in this game. Now, nobody is going to stop Jokic one-on-one. That just doesn't happen, right? But it felt like the defensive effort could have been a lot better, not just from Alpi, but from the team as a whole. This was just not a great defensive performance overall for the team. And then for KD just couldn't catch a rhythm. It was really disappointing. There was, and he had plenty of opportunities in this game. I don't buy into the idea that KD, didn't have enough shot attempts or couldn't get going or whatever. He was 3 of 6 to start in the first quarter, but then, he had one shot attempt in the second quarter, but that's because they were leaning into Reed Sheppard, right? The guy that almost single-handedly brought them back in this game. They leaned all the way into Reed Sheppard, and they kept feeding the hot hand, right? Which is what you're supposed to do. But then come third quarter, and, Kevin Durant, 1 of 5 in the third quarter. He was struggling, right? Jabari Smith Jr. kind of came alive in the third, and the Rockets had other guys stepping up offensively that were able to kind of, fill that void. But by the end of the game, and when it was crunch time, and when the Rockets needed some go-to play, some go-to support from their star players late in this game, neither one of them were in rhythm. And here's why I'm seriously not super concerned about this. I don't think the Nuggets found the secret recipe to stopping Kevin Durant here at, now that he's age 37, or I don't think that, Jokic is Alp's kryptonite or anything. Simply put, I just think that Alp and KD both had really bad games in the exact same game. And that might be kind of reductive analysis, but how often do those two guys really struggle the way that they did in this game? And how often are we likely to see them struggle at the same time in the same game again? Right? Some of it had to do with scheme. Some of it had to do with the Nuggets defense and the way things got started so roughly there in the first quarter. But outside of that, chalk it up to a really rough game from both those two guys. And the fact that the Rockets were a possession away from tying this game or forcing overtime, despite the struggles from Kevin Durant and Alperen Sengun, is really encouraging, because the role players were able to step up in a big way. You had Amen Thompson start to look like himself again on both sides of the floor because of, how things looked with Reed Sheppard out there in this game. You had Jabari Smith Jr., who showed up big time later in this one. If you get even a halfway normal game from either of Alperen Sengun or Kevin Durant in this game, we're talking about a 10 or 15 point Rockets win. And I know you can slice it up. You can say, well, if this, if that, if Aaron Gordon did get hurt for the Nuggets, I get all that. But that's part of the reason that I'm not overreacting this one. I don't think there was anything specific that the Nuggets just did so much better than the Rockets in this game that is a weakness that they've exposed, other than the spacing issues, which they did expose. And then the Rockets kind of adjusted, and the Nuggets weren't able to take advantage of that spacing anymore in the second half. So things looked better. It was just they had to overcome that really, really, really rough first quarter. And ultimately, that 13-point quarter that they spotted the Nuggets was a little bit too much to overcome. So coming up, we're going to get to final thoughts from this game, as well as the updated in-season tournament standings. Going to get there in just one moment. First, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand like Reed Sheppard, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team is making that late push. Right now, you can head to FanDuel.com. Take a look at the odds on favorites to win the title this season. Rockets odds didn't slip after this Nuggets loss, thankfully. Still plus 1,100, fourth best in the NBA. Ahead of them, the Cavs at plus 900, Nuggets plus 700, and the Thunder at plus 160. So for all those odds and more, head to FanDuel.com, where they're giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Again, head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. And final segment here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast, home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. All right, final thoughts from this game. And look, this was, the Rockets having stormed back into this game and making it a ball game. They only trailed by 2 going into that fourth quarter. And that was the stretch where it really felt like the Rockets were going to have a chance to take over this game, getting Jokic into foul trouble there late in the third quarter. And then early in that fourth, it really felt like all the momentum was in Houston's hands, that they were pushing, they were playing a bit more of an up-tempo style, leaning into their youth and athleticism a little bit there in the early fourth quarter, which is, at times has been a weakness for this Nuggets squad. This Rockets team is definitely more athletic than they are. And unfortunately, though, they just didn't have an answer for Jamal Murray defensively, who scored 16 of his points there in the fourth quarter. And they didn't get enough shot making at the end of the day. I apologize. Jamal Murray scored 14 of his points, not 16. Had that wrong in my notes. They just didn't get enough shot making down the stretch of this game. Now, Amen Thompson was fantastic there in the fourth quarter, and that's one other major takeaway from this one. I mentioned his name earlier, but having Reed Sheppard out there, it just feels like Amen Thompson gets to play his game again. I don't know if it's like a confidence thing, if it's a floor spacing thing, it probably has something to do with it as well. Mentioned how the floor spacing benefits Durant and Sengun so much, it also benefits Amen Thompson, right? And so Amen was fantastic in the fourth quarter, 11 points, 5 of 6 shooting, had a few rebounds, had a couple assists. Jabari Smith Jr. was big with his 3-3-pointers, including that one at the very end. Like the flurry at the end of this game, man, it really felt like the Rockets were about to mount this like insane, crazy comeback. With less than 24 seconds to play, Nuggets had a 6-point lead, and it looked like it was, all she wrote, and it was going to be game over after after a pair of Jamal Murray free throws to extend the lead to 6. And credits to Jamal Murray, man. The Rockets just didn't have a defensive answer for him down the stretch of this one. He was carving up the Rockets defense. But then Rockets run an ATO. Amen Thompson hits a big 3, cut it to a 3-point game. Cam Johnson hits a couple free throws. Sengun comes back down. They break the press. He scores, still a 3-point game. Rockets send Murray back to the free throw line. He goes 1 of 2. And, there's a little bit of daylight there. Rockets call their final timeout. They get the Jabari Smith Jr. turnaround corner prayer from 3, and he knocks it down, makes it a 1-point game. And Rockets tried their best. They tried to force a turnover, tried to, do something. Nuggets took care of the ball. Jokic sinks 2 free throws, makes it a 3-point game. And Sengun had a chance at the final, at the very end of regulation to heave it from midcourt and just couldn't connect. But to go through all that, to deal with the adversity that the Rockets dealt with in this game and have it come that close at the end, it's encouraging. And I think that there were a lot of encouraging moments from this game, a lot of encouraging signs from Reed Sheppard and from Amen Thompson and Jabari in particular there after kind of a rough first half and then really waking up in the second half. There's a lot to like from what we saw to this game and a lot that can be fixed for this team moving forward. In particular, right, just the way that the offense felt early in that game, right? They just had to dig themselves out of such a hole that they just ultimately weren't able to overcome that deficit. Again, you spot a team as good as the Nuggets, you spot them a 13-point win in the first quarter. It's going to be really hard to dig yourself out of that hole as the game progresses. I will say that, obviously the double big lineups were a weakness in this game. Spoke about that already kind of and the early offensive issues that this team faced because of it. But the Clint Capela minutes were kind of rough. And there was even a point where Clint Capela had like a wide open lob, right under the rim. I forget who threw it. It was either Reed Sheppard or maybe Amen Thompson. Somebody threw Clint a lob from the perimeter and he was wide open under the basket and couldn't even catch up to convert it. Got kind of hung on the rim and missed the attempt. And if Clint can't do that consistently, then there's little reason for him to be out there, unfortunately, because he's not providing, the one kind of offensive tool that he's supposed to provide. Like he's, still a serviceable rebounder, decent defender, but the whole kind of feels like the whole ethos of the double big lineup is that you're supposed to be able to impose your will on the other team. And already talked about how the Clint minutes by himself feel a little rough and that it'd be better to maybe see them try to pair him with Alperen Sengun. But in a game like this, right, the double big lineups were just not cutting it. Adams and Sengun looked a lot better out there by themselves than they did in tandem with one another. So I liked the adjustment from Ime at halftime to lean into Reed Sheppard. But again, making the adjustment is one thing, but actually getting the players to follow through on potentially a new game plan is another thing, right? And, Reed Sheppard getting frozen out of this one kind of killed the Rockets' chances, right? They had a guy that had dropped 20 points in the first half and only got two more looks in the second half, I should say. He wound up getting to the free throw line a couple times, knocked down some shots there, but ultimately just not enough reps for Reed Sheppard in the second half of this game. But they'll go back at this. They'll look at film. They'll figure out where they went wrong. And again, it's very unlike Kevin Durant, to have struggles like this consistently. And same thing for Alperen Sengun. I fully expect bounce back games for those guys moving forward. And it's going to be pretty rare to have games where both of them struggle. And I really don't think there was anything like special that the Nuggets did in particular, other than what they were doing when the Rockets had the multiple non-shooters out there. Once the Rockets got their floor spacing right, Nuggets couldn't contain them defensively. They dropped 37 in the second, they dropped 29 in the third, and then 31 in the fourth. So the scoring was fine after they fixed the spacing issues from having the double big plus Amen Thompson sharing the floor at the same time. So with that, I do want to let me do the in-season tournament updated standings. Unfortunately, I'm not going to say the Rockets are completely out of it. They're not. But it's going to take this game was kind of their ability to control their own destiny. Right now, the Blazers and Nuggets lead West Group C 2-1, or 2 wins, 1 loss each. However, the Blazers have a -18 differential, so Nuggets are really in first place with the 2-1. Or actually, I take that back, because the Blazers have the head-to-head win against the Nuggets. The Blazers are in the number 1 spot currently, even though their point differential is off. So because the Blazers beat the Nuggets head-to-head, if they tie, the head-to-head tiebreaker goes to the Blazers. So of West Group C, the group of death, the Blazers are currently the winners of this group, which is absurd to think about. Nuggets in second place, Spurs in third place, still 1-1. They need to play. They've yet to play their third. Are they missing a game? I guess they're still missing a tournament game. And they have a +10 differential. Rockets are 1-2 with a +11 differential. So this 4th and final in-season tournament group standing game against the Warriors, if the Rockets win it, they would need the Rockets would need to win this game and win it by a pretty significant margin to beef up their point differential. And they would need to hope that the Nuggets lose their final game, which I believe is against the Spurs, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not 100% sure on that, but if the Nuggets lose their final game, they also need the Blazers to lose their final game. So that's part of it as well. So yeah, as far as the final in-season tournament matchups are concerned, it's going to be really interesting to see how it all ultimately shakes out. You got Spurs and Blazers are playing as their final game, and then Rockets Warriors is the final game for them. And then where are the Nuggets? Where's the Nuggets final game? Who are they playing against? Who's their final matchup in this? Come on, man. I want to find out. Anyways, all right. Well, Nuggets have a final game against somebody in the West Group C. I should have looked it up before I started the show. That's terrible podcasting by me. But the Rockets aren't quite out of it all the way. They're close, and they don't control their destiny anymore, but they got to put themselves in at least as good a spot as possible with a possible win, hopefully, against the Warriors this upcoming Wednesday evening. Got to do it without Kevin Durant, though. Teased that earlier in the show. We'll talk about that in a miniature podcast, so be on the lookout for that, talking about KD missing these next 2 games, the opportunity it presents for the Rockets, and some other updates here and there to get to. But I want your thoughts from this Rockets-Nuggets game. What stood out to you about this matchup? What were your main takeaways from this game? Give me your thoughts in the YouTube comments. But as always, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening, and we look forward to having you back right here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball.